Hey guys, it's Christina coming to you all with another video. I feel like I've been gone for a while, but maybe not. I didn't want to post another video until after I finish the book that I just finished reading, which I'll be talking about in this video. But yeah, today I wanted to do a January wrap-up video and also a review of The Other Boyland Girl. So if you want to know more, stay tuned. So on my Goodreads, I set a goal to read 60 books in 2014, which for me, it seems like a hefty goal. If someone would have told me maybe 4 years ago to set a goal to read 60 books in a year, I probably wouldn't have second guessed it. But with college and my job and everything like that, it's kind of hard. But I think I'm going to be able to do it because one of my resolutions for this year was to set aside some time to actually read books that I enjoy. So this month I was able to read 4 books, and I did either a very short review or talked about them in my previous videos, but I'm going to talk about the books that I read for January. So like I said in my previous video, one of the very first books that I read was The Host by Stephenie Meyer. Did not like that book, and I decided that I would try to read it again in June or July, sometime in the summer, and maybe see if I like it again. With classes and everything, I thought that maybe that was the reason why I couldn't really dive into this book. But maybe there's a possible chance that I just don't like Stephenie Meyer's writing style, and I don't really understand the concept of the book. So I kind of put that down, so I don't really count that as one of my books that I read for this year. But Goodreads did, since I said I read it, but I didn't really read it. So I guess it counts for half a book. I don't know. One of the next books that I read was Return to Oz by Walter Murch and Jill Dennis. I really like this book because it kind of reminds me of being a kid again, and I used to watch The Wizard of Oz all the time when I was little. I've never really read the first book, but I was really interested in seeing what Dorothy's life was like after she returned to Kansas after being in Oz for a short period of time, I guess. And I really love this book, and I'm hoping to read the first book maybe sometime this year, put it on my list of books that I really want to read. But it was a really interesting book. It might seem to some that it would be a children's book or maybe a kid's book, a preteen book, but it really wasn't. It was written just kind of like, not a YA novel, but basically a fictional novel, and it was very interesting and a really nice read, so I really liked it. Okay, so don't laugh at this, but I let my friend borrow The Fault in Our Stars, so all I have is the cover to really show you all, because little short random story. I used to let people borrow my books back in middle school, and if they were not paperback books, but hardcover books, 9 times out of 10 they came with like this little cover sleeve, and when I would get the book back, it would be like torn or damaged or had something on it. So now when I let people borrow my books, I just take the cover off and let them have the hard copy book. So at least if something on the outside is ruined, then I can just put this back on there and you can't really tell. But yeah, anyway, I read The Fault in Our Stars, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I really, really love this book. If you haven't heard of The Fault in Our Stars, you've either been living in some other country that doesn't sell books, or you've either been living under a rock, because they've been talking about this book nonstop for the last couple of months now. And it's going to be a movie, and it's going to star Shailene Woodley, who is from The Secret Life of The Secret Life of an American Teenager, and she's going to star in Divergent, and she was just in The Spectacular Now. So I'm really interested in seeing the movie. This book is about basically a love story that's wrapped around a girl who is dealing with cancer. And I did a review on this book, so if you want to see that, I'll post a link below. But it's an amazing, heartfelt book. I cried. I think everybody cried reading this book. So I'm kind of anxious to see what the movie's going to be like, and I will definitely be bringing tissues. The next book that I decided to read, which I think was my last video that I did a review on, is Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. I gave this book, I think, a 3 out of 5 on Goodreads. I think this book was written very confusingly. Don't know if that's a word, but this book didn't really catch my eye in the beginning, and that's why I set it down when I first got the book. Now that I'm deciding to read a lot more books again, I decided, well, let me go ahead and pick it back up and see if I really like it. There were parts in the book that I really liked, other parts that I didn't. The whole basis of the story is about a boy named Oscar. He loses his father in the World Trade Center in 9/11, and he finds this key in his parents' closet, and he's trying to figure out what's the meaning behind it. Did his father leave this behind because his father was kind of like this philosophical person, and he thinks that maybe this means something. Maybe I can find a piece of my dad that I never really got to see while he was living, and all this good stuff. But if you want to see a full review, I have it in the last video. Like I said, I gave it a 3 out of 5. It's an okay book. I plan on keeping it. Maybe if I read it again, I might understand it a little bit more, but for right now, I just didn't get into it that much. So the last book in my January wrap-up is The Other Boiling Girl by Philippa Gregory, and I have this big smile on my face because I loved this book so much, and I was really excited to find out that the movie was actually an adoption from the book that I didn't know existed. So of course I had to read this book. So basically the basis of this book is about a 14-year-old girl named Mary Boleyn who moves to the court, and she catches the eye of King Henry. And so once her family, which consists of her mother, her father, her uncle, her brother, and her sister Anne, who doesn't come on till later on in the book, once they realize that the king is somewhat infatuated about her, they figure out that they need to use Mary as a pawn to get closer to the king so that they can move up in rank. Unbeknownst to Mary, she ends up actually falling in love with the king. Even though she's already married, her family wants her to stick with the king, so they basically tell her, you know, you're going to have to put your husband aside, which I found it was really bold for them to tell her husband, you know, like, look, I know this is your wife, but the king has shown interest in Mary, and we need to have money and we need to have power, so you're going to have to step aside, basically. So Mary ends up falling in love with the king. The king ends up, I guess you can say, falling in love with Mary. She ends up having 2 kids by him. And somewhere in the middle of it, her sister comes in and she kind of helps Mary with, you know, getting closer to the king. And, you know, Anne's kind of like the stitch that ties the family together in a sort of twisted kind of way, because she helps Mary to help her get closer to the king in some sort of way so she doesn't mess it up, because whereas Mary is using like emotion and she actually has feelings for the king, Anne on the other hand is more realistic and she's a lot more cynical, and all she really cares about is the power and the money, like the rest of the Boleyn family. So also you see in this is kind of like a rivalry between Mary and Anne. They just are always butting heads. And one thing that I've noticed in the book that I didn't notice in the movie was how evil Anne really was. Like, I know that I sort of got a glimpse, obviously, when she stole the king away from Mary, but she is like freaking evil in this book. And Mary, on the other hand, in the movie they portray her as this like innocent, doesn't really know what's going on, is kind of like angelic, innocent, you know, nice and sweet, which she is, but she's also really smart, and she also thinks a lot. Like, she doesn't just do things out of emotion like they show in the movie. She actually thinks things through, and she actually cares about her family, and she cares about herself, and she's kind of sort of in a predicament where she wants to do what's best for her family, but at the same time she wants to do what's best for her and live the life that she wants to live. Okay, so the things that I did and didn't like about this book. Like I said, I gave it a 4 to 5 stars, but I actually really loved the book. I loved the time error. I loved the kings and queens. I love the description. I love the way that she wrote this book. It makes you feel like you actually, you know, went back in time and you were, you know, you put yourself in that era. So I love when authors are able to, you know, put you in a certain time period and they don't divert from it. It's like once, like from the very first page to the very last page, it's like you're in some other type of, you know, place. And I really love that about this author. I loved the whole plot. I loved the characters. My favorite character was obviously Mary Boleyn. I loved her brother George. I thought that his character was very interesting, and I wish that they would have shown a lot more of him in the movie. I kind of get why they didn't. If you don't know the background of this book, I don't want to give it away, but it's very scandalous between Anne, who's Mary's sister, and George, who is her brother. Very scandalous. So I kind of understand why they didn't show a lot of that in the movie. It wouldn't have been appropriate. The only thing that I didn't like is that it was freaking long. 700 pages. 700. And, you know, I think that's not bad. I mean, the Harry Potter book, The Deathly Hallows, I think that was like 800 pages. So it's not that bad. But when I read Deathly Hallows, I was like in middle high school. Yeah, middle school, high school. Yeah, no, I was in high school when I read Deathly Hallows. No. Yeah, I was in middle school when I read Deathly Hallows. And so, I mean, all I really had to do was read that book. I didn't have anything else going on besides homework. But reading 700 pages and having other things going on, it's like, yeah. But other than that, I really loved the book and I love the whole concept, and I would definitely recommend this book, and I would really recommend checking out her other books, and I do plan on reading a lot more from this author. So yeah, that's all. That's my January wrap up. My next video will be my February To Be Reads book, and I'll probably most likely will post that after this video, and I know I'm kind of late on it, but yeah, I wanted to read that book and it took a while, and I was trying so hard to finish that book in January, but it was not gonna happen. So yeah, if you want to discuss any of the books that I've talked about, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.